Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi. That's right, I decided it was time to take an on-screen persona. And it's that time again. It's midweek, and I want you to play some magic so you can win 2 free rare or better ICRs. For almost a week now, the arena has been all abuzz with the new Alchemy release inspired by Dominaria United, and this week's midweek magic is no exception as we focus in on the Alchemy format. We in particular are going to be taking a look at a Goblin deck for Alchemy. The fine folks at Wizards have seen fit to rather gift us a fairly solid basis for a Goblin deck in Alchemy. Unfortunately, it does not exist for Standard to such a degree as of yet. That may change. I don't see any reason to think we are not going to continue to get good Goblin pieces moving forward. But there is certainly a good incentive to look at Goblins for Alchemy right now, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to start off by taking a look at the recently published Goblin deck that came out for the Into the Future event, and, well, quite frankly, make some improvements on it. So stay tuned. But before we get into all that, allow me to do the awkward thing and promote the channel. A while back, one of my viewers was kind enough to point out that we are the only channel putting out timely midweek magic content. So be sure to subscribe right here at the Planeswalker Stronghold for all of your future midweek magic needs, because we will be bringing you a deck list or strategy every single week. So what do you say we put all this aside and just get to that? Alright, so this is the Goblin deck for the recent Alchemy Into the Future event. And I just kind of wanted to go over it real quick, because I think there's some good things going on here from a budget perspective, and some things that I think are kind of a miss, or places where they're being a little heavy-handed with the Alchemy cards themselves. And to be honest, that can be somewhat excusable, particularly in an event that is meant to promote the brand new Alchemy set. First up, the Goblin Trap Finder as a 4-of. Even though this is an uncommon and very budget friendly, I'm not sure this is what you want as your 1-drop in the deck. Certainly not a 4-of. I'm thinking 2 is probably the right number here. Mostly because while it does give you a pseudo card draw in the Seeking of a Creature card, that creature also dies at the end of turn, so it's a very temporary card draw. Next up, we've got some removal in the form of Strangle and Abrade. Excuse me. Sorry, I had to turn the mic off there for a minute so I didn't just completely cough in your ear. But anyway, back to Strangle and Abrade here. Obviously, removal is a good idea in this, but the idea that neither one of these spells can go face, you can't target your opponent with them, might make this deck a little difficult to close out the game, particularly in those aggro mirror matches. Abrade, of course, does give you the option to destroy artifacts, which mono-red artifacts is definitely a thing. And Strangle's sorcery speed, I don't know. I don't think Strangle is going to make the cut in my version of the deck, but to each their own. Goblin Battle Cry, the Morale Sergeant, and the Horde Master, I think these are absolute must-includes. I think 4-of on each one is really, really solid. If you don't have all the Horde Masters yet, don't rush into using your wild cards. Just be patient. You'll eventually get there. This is a standard draftable set for another, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks here. You're going to get there. And probably there's still a lot of people out there that haven't opened their packs yet if they're following my budget method for building up their collection. From there, we've got Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I think 2 here is a fantastic number, but I also feel like this card is not a requirement for the deck. Certainly the deck gets better if you have those. But I would not craft this card specifically for this deck, although there's plenty of decent reasons to craft Fable in the current standard environment. So, you kind of got to look at your own collection and how you're going to end up utilizing that card. Squee is fantastic, but the mere fact that it's legendary makes me not want to run 3. I think for my own personal version, 1 is going to be the right number. I think 2 is certainly not unreasonable either. But with 3 in hand, I think you're going to have times where you have a Squee on the board that's well protected and a dead card in hand, and that just really isn't where you want to be in an aggro deck that's learning or wanting to win games by turn 4. Coalition Construct, this is another one of those places that in my mind they have kind of pushed the new cards a little bit. Construct is a fantastic card. I think probably in the long run this is a card everybody's going to want at least 1 copy of for tribal purposes, if nothing else. I think 3 copies in this deck is a little heavy-handed and definitely serving an agenda here. And I could easily make cases where you don't need this card at all and could easily be replaced with some much more budget-friendly 3-drops. More on that later. From there, in the 4-drop, we got Goblin Influx Array. This is a great card. There's no question about it. Is it fast enough for the Alchemy version of the deck? Does it earn a slot in Historic? I think those things remain to be seen. I think if you are a true Goblin player, and I count myself as one, we're going to want at least 1 copy of this for our Goblin Brawl deck. But beyond that, I think this is a highly questionable card with a lot of upside, mind you. But 4 mana in a Goblin deck is pretty darn high, particularly when you are also conjuring cards with similarly high 2, 3, 4 versions of the various spellbook cards. Goblin Twin Shot, this is one of those things I kind of disagree with a lot of the Goblin meta out there. I just don't think this card is where you really want it to be, and certainly not as a 4-of. This is going to end up being a card in your hand that is waiting to be cast for a long time. The channel ability obviously makes it very solid removal. The fact that it ETBs and functions as removal, either as a creature or as 2 to the face, kind of addresses some of the other issues. But I think a 2/3 with reach for 4 mana is okay. 2 copies is where I would set the limit on this. I think 3 and 4, you're just asking to have these in your hand and not really have anything suitable to do with them, particularly if you make some changes to the instant and sorcery speed removal package that they've got in here. From here, Hostile as a 2-of. I'm going to be honest, I don't get this at all, other than it's a sack outlet that makes a creature that's off color, and or I don't know. This feels like just jamming a mythic into this deck list, and worse yet, they put 2 copies of it. If you already own this card, by all means, feel free to test this. Let me know what you find. In any of my playthroughs with the Goblin deck, this never really came in as anything other than just a colorless mana source, which really isn't what this deck wants. Gates of Tumbledown. It's a tempo issue for such a fast aggro-based red deck. I don't love it for that. It does give you mid and late game card draw, which might bail you out of a game, but I would just rather win on more substantial tempo. And certainly running 4 of these, I think this is Wizards attempting to justify more alchemy cards and justify these having been included in the last 2 sets of jump-in packs. They want to show people that you can actually use this card. Mountain 16 feels pretty good. I think the total number of lands on this, particularly if you kind of streamline those 4-drops a little bit, is probably more like 18 to 20 lands. So I think that opens up some slots to do some other things here. And of course, the red legendary land, pretty nice. It can be used to create creatures. I don't think this is a necessary card for the deck by any means. And if you want to run one, I certainly couldn't argue with you. But I think two here is just kind of gilding the lily. All right, so taking what we learned from that Wizards provided Goblin build for the Alchemy event, and kind of casting a budget across it here and getting a little more realistic, I think. Let's take a look at what I'm going to be running this week. This is not a build that's going to be for everyone. Obviously, Alchemy is not a thing that everyone wants to invest in. And a lot of this assumes that you are around to either draft Baldur's Gate and or the Forgotten Realms set, as both Battlecry Goblin and Hobgoblin Captain come to us from those sets. Even though Forgotten Realms has rotated, it is still currently Alchemy legal and is 8 slots in this deck. So if those things are not true, this becomes a much less effective and much more expensive deck to potentially build. But with that in mind, we've got 2 copies of the Trap Finder in here, makes a nice 1-drop. Kamano is, well, just kind of a ubiquitous red 1-drop right now. It's not really synergistic, obviously. No part of this fits particularly well with Goblins. But it is in here for budgetary concerns, because I feel pretty confident that most people are going to have 4 copies of this, or should have 4 copies of this at some point in the future. If you don't have those, or if you want to run something that's a little more synergistic, keep in mind there's a number of good goblins, both in standard at low levels of commonality, as well as in your new player experience alchemy grouping. Raging Goblin, although that's not currently in the new player experience for this year, is still alchemy legal. And if you really like those goblin builds and you want to be able to run a very synergistic version for alchemy, that might be worth 4 wildcards for you. Use your own judgment. And certainly if you've been around for a while, I know you've got at least 2 copies of that from last year. So there it is. Certainly some various options. Play with Fire. This is what I'm putting in here for the instant speed. It can go face, which I think is very important in these mono red aggro decks. It also gives you the ability to scry 1 when you do go to the face. And of course, it's still a 2 damage removal spell, and I think reasonably better than Shock. I hesitate to say strictly better, but this might actually be strictly better than Shock. At any rate, Battlecry Goblin, this uncommon absolutely makes the deck. Dropping this on turn 4 and immediately giving it haste, and all of your other goblins haste and +1/+0 for the other 2 mana. Absolutely groundbreaking. Morale Sergeant, we saw just how ridiculous this can be. I want to test some different 1-drops in here to work with the Morale Sergeant and his Enlist trigger. Also, Hobgoblin Captain in here. We talked about that being from some other sets. I think Captain on 2 into Sergeant on 3 could be really, really explosive, copying your Hobgoblin Captain and just keep reloading your deck with more and more copies of that. Similarly, the Horde Master, multiple copies of Lords showing up in your deck is just really potentially groundbreaking. Not to mention, these are almost always going to have targets on their back. If your opponent has removal, this is probably what they're going to go for first. Lightning Strike is another one of those direct damage, this one for 3, so it deals with a few problems that Play with Fire does not. It still has the option to go to face to help you close out the game. Burn Bright, this is a cute little trick that I love for these red aggro creature-based decks, basically exploding if your opponent does not block and thinks they can survive one more turn. This can just end games. It also makes for awkward blocking decisions, so they think they're chump blocking a bunch of stuff, and you wipe their field pretty effectively. Very, very nice stuff here. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Reflection of Kiki Jiki. I think this is a great card for Goblins. I personally have not tested it very much, and it's in here for that testing purpose. Whether it is ultimately going to make the final cut or not for this deck remains to be seen. Squee, I think, is certainly going to be in the final version of the deck. The real question is, what is the proper quantity? I feel confident it's at least 1. I'm currently going to be testing 2 and kind of see where it goes. And Coalition Construct is a potentially good 3-drop here. I'm not sure how long it's going to stay in the deck, how relevant it is in something like Historic. Obviously, no relevance in the other Eternal format. Explorer, really wanted to call it Pioneer and just shouldn't. But anyway, this giving all of your Goblins on the field as well as all of your Goblins in your hand is a pretty nice little feature. Of course, he doesn't benefit from that pumping whatsoever, so he kind of becomes a sacrificial attacker. Of course, he does benefit from something like Burn Bright. He can also be a sacrificial chump blocker if you need to, but it just doesn't fit the overall synergy of the Goblin deck. The Influx Array. This is one of those cards I'm just not 100% sure on. It's extremely powerful. This comes online and you are almost certainly going to win, but it's also a 4-drop and something that's trying to be very low to the ground. And I'm not sure if it ends up earning a place or if it's just a little too slow. If it does earn a place, I'm not sure what the correct quantity is, but I definitely wanted to own one. I definitely want to test one. If for nothing else, this is going to earn a spot in my Goblin Brawl deck. So I feel good about the 1 copy that I happened to get. And we're going to test it out here and see how good is it. Twin Shot Sniper. This is actually a card I don't feel good about. I don't think this is a great card for the Goblin deck, again, because it costs 4. But the fine folks at Wizards felt good enough to include multiple copies of this in their version, and the channel ability for 2 that is to any target could be useful. So I'm going to run 2 slots here with it and see where we get. Goblin Trashmaster is mostly in here as a budgetary concession. This is the Goblin Lord that you got in your Alchemy only new player experience cards, and we're going to run it in here as a 4-drop, and hopefully you could drop this on turn 4 to swing for the win, pumping your team up. It also has the ability of sacking the Goblin and destroying an artifact, which can be relevant in today's meta, so we'll see where that goes. The land base is pretty simple, 19 mountains. I'm running 1 of the Kamigawa Red Legendary Lands. I could easily make a case why this card is not necessary. I'm going to test it and see what it does for us, but that could easily just be cut, particularly if you don't own a copy of it already. This could just as easily be a 20th mountain. So there is the deck for you guys. I'm just going to run the Goblin deck up against Sparky, mostly because I don't want to put the tech out there too soon. I think this is a very suitable hand. It's pretty low curve. We're really only trying to effectively get to 3, and I feel pretty confident we can get there. So let's keep this and see what it does for us. So yeah, I think that game, even with a couple of misplays there, shows the potential of the deck. What's that? You didn't catch all that? Well, Matt would like you to know that any deck list applicable to this video can be found down in the doobly-doo. Hey, let's not forget, the whole reason to participate in these totally free midweek Magic events is the prize support is awesome. And don't forget, if this video gets just 10 likes by 8 p.m. tonight on the day of release, I will be live playing this on my Twitch channel. And with all that having been said, don't forget, smash that like button like Ronnie J would. And until next time, I'll see you in the arena.